How's it going, everybody? So, I'm going to be talking about um, something that helps me in recovery, and that's really learning how to be in this book called Centered. What helps me in recovery to become centered, right? And you know, when I think the biggest key points of recovery is whether you want to accept it or not, is learning to manifest a a higher state of self consciousness. Right? There are things that are going on with us that are subconsciously eating away at us, right? Constantly, right? If we're not attending to those things, it gets worse and worse and worse. We're not being, honest enough with ourselves to obtain first of all the honesty, and then secondly to attend right to those sufferings within us. um, we have to be willing to understand that this suffering is something that we've carried for a very, very long time. For a lot of us, it's probably not a very hard thing to do. um, it's easy to admit, or maybe not, but one of the biggest things that's helped me in my road to recovery is the idea of lining myself up, my self consciousness, with my higher power state of self consciousness, right? And to me, I realized I needed to simplify it down because I like to complicate things. But one of the things I noticed in this book is it says the ground of being is not a thing or a monolith or an absolute. Rather, it is a communio, meaning sharing, of being and letting be. And that's kind of how I fully understand, this conscious contact with my higher power, because I can then allow myself something that is foreseeable, something I can understand at a human level, that I thought was impossible to align myself up with God and my higher power. Because I used to think that God was something that I would never be able to reach until I reached heaven, and I would then be able to experience him to the fullest. When I realized that is completely false. Also, I had the idea that one day maybe I'll be able to reach God, and once I understood him now in this life, I would just be basically a saint, and he would instill something into my heart, and then I would never want to do evil ever again. Uh, Both of which were two extremes, that I was living, and I couldn't find the center, right? Like this book says, I could not find the center, and when I read that, really helped me to see it for what it really is versus what my egotistical mind always thought when it came to religion and stuff like that. But when it says the grounded being, you know, there's it's not a thing or a monolith or an absolute, which is what I always thought. I thought once you get to that specific point in life, that boom, you'd be great, you'd be happy, you'd reach God, and then you're ready to become to go into heaven and be happy for all eternity. And that's just not the way it really is. When it really talks about is that rather it's a sharing of the understanding of being and letting be, which I can then share with my higher power. Because if my higher power is in a constant state of being, right, that he is, and he doesn't do anything to try and adjust or change or do whatever, right, I can have full understanding that he is something that's beyond my capacity to understand and comprehend, that he has full control over things that are beyond my understanding is on a very human level. The humanity of me is not strong or wise enough to understand the sheer complexities of this world. And what I'm trying to do is understand at a basic human level, how can I come in conscious contact and understanding with my higher power, that then I can share with him and myself and know that that's a safe place to go to whenever I'm feeling stressed, confused, tired, lonesome, hungry, angry, lone, whatever, right? Whatever those things are that lead me to go back into addictive behaviors. And the absence of being and letting be has constantly been a constant falter of any of my character assets and defects. So when I'm straying away from allowing myself to be at a state of being and letting be, right, where I now am obtaining this sense of humility, where I'm now saying I am who I am, just as God always says, and as Jesus says, he's basically giving us this idea, right, that is helping us to see that even God himself, even Jesus himself says, I am who I am, right? Saying that they are who they are and they are strong in the fact that that is what they are, right? I am exactly what I am, no matter what. I will always be that way, and I'm proud of that, and there's nothing, right, that I need more. Powerful statement, right? But for me, if I can somehow align myself in that way and actually relate, with God in that same way, and I begin to say the same thing, and I say, I am who I am, right? Not in a way of saying, I am above all, I am be all, but I can relate in a way by saying, I am who I am, and I accept that because that is what God gave me. God gave me who I am, right? And I can be perfectly comfortable with who I am and where I am and how I am, right? As soon as I accept, right, acceptance, right, the root of all of our problems as addicts and alcoholics is lack of acceptance, right? And when I can now comprehend this idea, right, of being, right, just as I previously described, the act of being, I am who I am, whoever I am, wherever I am, however I am, that is what it is, right? It is what it is. That saying you hear all the time. It is what it is. That is full, truth and acceptance that it is what it is. That I am who I am, and then I can accept the idea of letting be, right? That no matter what is going on around me, whatever I do with myself, right? I still have to accept the fact that I need to give up a lot of my personal control, my own interpretation of personal power, to accept that whatever is going on around me is far beyond my capacity to control. And therefore I must let that be out of my hands, right? And allow a stance where I can then say, let it be, right? And then when I'm now in that constant sharing of communio, right, where it's saying letting be and being be, in sharing that constant interaction between myself and my outer environment, right? And that outer environment really being God's world that he created, right? I can't control God's world, but I can help in any capacity that he sees fit for me, where he sees fit for me to help in this particular area of his world that he allows me to interact with. And when I'm in constant communio with God, I can learn how to gain higher states of wisdom, and states of understanding and knowledge that are far beyond my understanding to comprehend. But with his guidance, he can drop those small bits of droplets, I guess we'll say, that help me to understand whatever particular situation that would be helpful, right, in that situation. So when I'm in constant sharing of being and letting be, I then can allow this sense of acceptance for exactly how things are when they happen, even though they are things that are not really, I would say, the most particularly exciting thing, or particularly sometimes things I really don't like. I just hate, where People are honking at me in the middle of the city market because I left the door open in my car and I'm trying to find a way to get out of the car, but I got to organize stuff before I can get myself out of the car, and someone else is being impatient and they're honking at me. Right, this whole scenario, right? And I can choose to either catastrophize that entire fucking situation, right? Or I can say, you know what? That person's that person's reaction to this situation is beyond my state of control or understanding at this moment in time, which is why I develop so much resentment for it, because I want to be able to change that person's interaction with God's world, but I can't. I have to accept that that person at that moment in time is what it is. That is exactly what they are doing with their life at that point in their time, because that is how they are getting through life, whether it be benefiting themselves, most of the time, if they're being impatient, that could be. However, again, a situation that I do not need to dive too far deeply into because it's a waste of my time to be trying to understand something that's beyond my comprehension, right? Beyond my capability to understand about other people. All I can do is empathize and try and see it from a broader perspective of maybe perhaps this person is very, there's something about their life right now that is not going well. And so when I reconnect with the idea of, okay, is what it is, that is when I'm allowing God to come in and I say, God, that is your part in here. That's your life, or that's your, I should say, your ability to step in and do whatever you got to do in that situation for that person. But at this moment in time, help me do what I need to do, to assist, right, in this world that you've provided me. And then I can start to understand the idea of the gift of self, right? I can now cultivate this idea of the gift of myself to my higher power, and then that then moves me as a believer to change my life and to provide and cultivate the idea of gift of self for the growth and recovery.